So in Canada, this is how we mix our mushroom substrate. It snows outside, and then we mix it in with the wood chips, and we get perfect moisture content. This is how the pros make mushrooms, right here.
Yeah.
So we just said goodbye to our first student for 2018, and I already have another student arriving this afternoon. I'm expecting AJ Williams. He lives just outside of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I'm always excited to get another Canadian on this farm whenever I have students taking my course, and Canadians are kind of rare. Most of the people that do attend the mentorship are from the US, and then a few people international, a few people from Canada. So I just want to go over what to expect this week with AJ. I'll talk about what we did with Elizabeth, and you guys can kind of get a sense of where my season is at and where we're headed. That's coming up next. So we started last week on the farm. It was pretty cold all week, but we made the most of it and we got a lot done. We were cleaning our greenhouses, getting them all set up for spring production. We did 2 runs of production. We did a batch of our master's mix on the hardwood fuel pellets, and we did our first batch of wood chips. We were having problems with temperature, and it was snowing when we were processing our wood chips, so we were literally just mixing in snow and all of our dry ingredients and just let everything sit on the concrete pad, and then in the morning we adjusted the moisture just by adding a little bit of water, and with all the damp snow that was on the pile and then mixing in a little bit of water, we were probably a little bit still had too much moisture. But the nice thing with wood chips is they are very forgiving. All that excess moisture will just kind of drain into the bottom of the bag, and it just won't colonize. And then when we put it in the fruiting room, the kind of soupy sap will just kind of settle to the bottom, and the mycelium will kind of grow in areas that it has dried. And as long as you don't release that goopy sap that can happen if your substrate's too wet, we're still going to get a nice crop of mushrooms. So kind of adjusting our strategy with the weather, and moving forward, we might focus more on the master's mix until the temperatures thaw a little bit here, but everything is starting to melt, so we might have some warm weather coming up. But either way, so we have a full batch here. Another we missed one tank, so we have 200 bags of our wood chip bags here, and this is all Manitoba maple. We started keeping temperature readings last year. I got this one here. This is in Celsius. So an interesting note is this has been cooling down for just over 24 hours, and the internal temperature is 50 Celsius. And we noticed when we had the hardwood fuel pellets that after about 24 hours, the internal temperature was about 75 Celsius. So significantly different in retaining heat with the pellets. And I've mentioned this before, that's because there's more air spaces with the wood chips. The hardwood fuel pellets are denser. We fit more bags in the sterilizer, which means they retain more heat longer. And by day 2 with the hardwood fuel pellets, we ended up unloading at, I think it was about 42 Celsius. And we're going to be unloading this, if we unloaded this today, actually hotter than I'd like. So, it's a strategy that I'm going to be working on with the longer cool down, but getting more tanks in rotation so that we can detach these units and let them cool down separately. That being said, during the colder months, there's not really too much in the air. So if I'm unloading these bags a little bit hotter, let's say around 50, 55 Celsius, and I'll keep track of this, I already know that they're not going to contaminate. It's just we were realizing that as the summer progresses and as the air becomes more dirty, removing these hot bags and transporting them outside into our lab is a huge vector of contamination. The plastic is just not as strong because it's softened from the heat, and then as soon as we take the bags out, they kind of lose that vacuum seal and they'll suck in any air that's around the environment. And just happens that kind of in the winter leading up to mid-spring, that's not really a concern. But what's interesting is I've never really checked the temperature at kind of like 24 hours with wood chips and hardwood fuel pellets, and kind of didn't really have a baseline of what temperature I'm unloading the tanks at. So this is all really good to know. And I've made a note that after 2 days, we unloaded the master's mix with the hardwood fuel pellets, and the internal temperature was about 42, 45 Celsius, around that area. And ideally, I'm looking to unload at it's about 35 to 30 Celsius, and in Fahrenheit, that's between like 80 and 90 Fahrenheit. But that's looking like that's going to be like a 3-day cool down just with these tanks. And then when we move into this bigger tank, which I'm going to be posting a video on that very soon. I'm just waiting on these hoses to attach to the bulkhead just down there. We're getting a special heat hose that we can just hook up so that the tank doesn't have to be perfect. But the point is that this tank is going to retain so much more heat. The advantage to this design, though, I've sourced out some concrete. They're like concrete boards. They're normally used for the back of your stove. I don't have the name in my head what I'm thinking about, but they're these really thin 1/2-inch concrete boards, and I'm going to cut those into place. They might even have handles, and we're just going to insulate this with thin concrete. I think that's going to be the strategy to go. But again, I'm going to do a video on this. I got to make sure that this plastic won't melt. This is all polypropylene, so I have high hopes for this design, and just how mobile this design is and how scalable this design is. I really think this is what we're going to be doing this year, but I'll keep you guys posted on that. So other than that, for this week, we are going to be doing probably about 2 to 3 more runs of production. We have a little bit of wood chips in the back here. I'm waiting on my partner to get me some more wood chips. So Thor, if you're watching this video, let's get some wood chips this week, please. And if Thor can't get us wood chips, then we will focus on hardwood fuel pellets. And I still have lots here. I can get some more at the hardware store as well. And then I think we're going to be doing the overwintering production maybe this week or the week after. I'm looking at getting this lab 2, empty. So right now we have all of our blocks in here that have froze over the winter, and this lab has been maintained at freezing. These blocks are still quite frozen just by touching them, and they're still alive. And you can see there is definitely some mycelium that has started fruiting. So we do have mushrooms pinning in the bag, but we're just going to expose a clean side in the greenhouse, and we'll probably be thawing them out in the greenhouse. We'll cut the slits, and I'm assuming as they thaw out, the mushrooms are going to start fruiting. And I have high hopes for this. This is a great strategy for us to get our year started, especially that we're so behind already. So we're looking to kind of finish our production off in late fall, kind of end of October, November, overwinter our production and get those in the greenhouse. And we're looking to do that as the weather allows us to. So I'm hoping that is in probably the next week, and we can start filling any of these greenhouses. We have 3 greenhouses that are clean, and that's what we did last week with Elizabeth, who is our student here from Texas. So we got these 2 greenhouses clean here, and they're ready to go. And then actually the following week I got Clay to clean this one, and then the 2 in the back here, they actually have overwintering production that we were growing mushrooms end of the season. So we've almost got the first flush, but it's kind of like 50% of the first flush out of these, and they're just kind of sitting dormant. And then we have a couple different trials. I've talked about it in other videos, but basically Greenhouse 5 has a trucker tarp that is completely over the shelves, and the blocks are dark, so they have no sunlight. And I've proven that this year how effective that can be. We didn't get a flush of mushrooms in this greenhouse when it warmed up, compared to this greenhouse, which all it has is a shade cloth, same conditions, but has sunlight, and we got mushrooms fruiting where I didn't want them to, and they were dried out and they weren't ideal. So moving forward, pushing our production kind of at the start of the season with overwintering, and kind of getting that 50% of the other first flush, then hopefully the second flush. Probably the trucker tarp and darkening out the greenhouse is going to be the best strategy for that. And I really am looking forward to seeing the overwintering production in Lab 2.